I'm Jillian O'Brien. This is my third school year here at Lutheran, and I am a school-based therapist in the Hazelwood School District, and I work in an elementary school. So we have K through 5 at our school, and I see kids in all of those grades throughout the week and every day. Counseling in general has always been something that has been interesting to me. I've worked with kids for a long time. Before I became a counselor, I worked in Illinois. I worked with the foster care system there. I wish that we had had something like this program in my schools growing up. It really is helpful for the kids, for the teachers and the parents, just to have a resource on campus at school where the kids are most of their time. You know, they spend more time at school than they do at home during the school year. So having that resource available to them right there and whenever they're needing it is really important. The biggest one was last year when we went fully virtual. So our whole school district was fully virtual. Our school district, I felt, did a really good job of making sure that our kids had the resources needed. So everybody got a Chromebook at home, hotspots were given out, things like that. But there were some that it was difficult to find maybe the privacy needed when we're doing a virtual session, a therapy session, when they're in a home full of other kids doing virtual learning, or parents working, or grandparents, or if they're at a daycare center. So that's probably the biggest challenge when you're doing the virtual, is trying to give them that privacy that kind of helps them feel comfortable to open up to do that work with you. In this school, there's a lot of kids that we're called a transient school. So there's a lot of kids that kind of come and go. So they're here for a semester and then they move out of the district or they move to a different school. So that's a challenge in and of itself. Also kind of getting in touch and staying in touch with parents who don't have the, again, time, resources to kind of make that effort, even when they're really wanting to. So just kind of trying to find different ways to keep in touch and to give resources when kids kind of move out of the area. So this year specifically, I have a very heavy caseload of kids who are dealing with some really big traumas. The pandemic plays into that in some ways, with grief and loss, kind of that loss of community, really, on top of some of those other big traumas that a lot of my kids are having. So that can be parents who are incarcerated, having parents that are split, trying to find time to see both of them, especially during the pandemic. That juggling act in and of itself is so difficult for families, and that plays into those kids. So I've got a lot of grief and loss and trauma backgrounds of kids this year specifically. Some of the other things are just anxiety, coming back to school after being virtual for a full year is anxiety inducing for these kids. They don't understand it fully. They're scared of what that means, of what it looks like when we come back and we're all wearing masks, and just not having had that social interaction for an entire year has been very difficult. So those are some of the biggest things that I kind of deal with on a daily basis. So I do a lot of play therapy techniques in my room. So with that, it's a really good tool for us therapists to use, especially in the elementary schools, because play is a kid's language. They don't have the language that we as adults have, and they don't understand the feelings that they're having or the things that they're dealing with. But all of that comes out through their play. So helping them to work through it, to understand it, to kind of give them that language that they need in order to kind of overcome these difficulties is the first step, and all of that comes out through play. Some of the other things I do is I work with the teachers a lot of times. If these kids are dealing with some trauma backgrounds, they're going to have some trauma responses within the classroom, and those come out as many different things. A lot of kids can get triggered and then they run, or they leave class and they run around the school, or they get angry, they throw things, they throw their desk, they can, tear the classroom apart. Those are all kind of trauma responses. So working with the teachers and kind of giving them tools to help de-escalate a kid when they're in that situation, or also just to understand what's happening when that happens so that they can come at it from a different perspective. I have a kid that I started seeing last year. He was in first grade last year. And I did not see him until we came back in March. So I started seeing him in March when we first returned to school from being virtual for a year. And he was struggling to be virtual. He's got a trauma background, but he didn't talk to his teacher very much. He would hide, he would run and hide. And those trauma responses I was just talking about were kind of coming up with him. And he did not want to talk to me. And that's okay. I'm not the therapist that you have to sit down and have a conversation with. So we used those play therapy tools, and I still see him this year. He's in second grade, and he has made leaps and bounds, working with his teacher, with his mom, and just kind of giving them extra tools. He is starting to come out of his shell. He talks a lot more. He'll even talk in here. We have conversations now, as opposed to just playing full play therapy each time he's in session. And he's just starting to gain that language, that emotional language that he needed in order to kind of help himself. And to begin with, it is just an act of expression. It helps us to see what he's dealing with, what he is emotionally having or dealing with in his brain, to kind of have those reactions and those emotions. It gives us the language that he doesn't have. So once we see that, then we can kind of direct some of that play. We're giving him those tools, the self-care kind of tools, the coping mechanisms, and the language of those emotions, and identifying those emotions in yourself and in other people, understanding what happens and what kind of triggers those emotions for you, and then gives you that language to be able to express that to other people as well. So through all of that play, you just kind of give them the tools that you would kind of give them through other types of therapy. You just do those tools through the play, which is their language. A lot of times I will go and observe. I'll sit in the classroom and observe a little bit, just to kind of see what those behaviors look like in the classroom setting. Another perk of being kind of in the school building. So after I kind of observe, then I can talk with those teachers. I can give them those strategies, or even just explaining to them, hey, this might not be what you think it is, right? It could be a trauma response. A lot of times trauma responses come out as like an ADHD symptom, right? And a lot of people will jump to that immediately. But then working with the teacher on what you're working with in the counseling room of, hey, these are some of the skills that we're learning. Can you help remind him? When he does start to get triggered, hey, we worked on remembering our safe space, which is a coping skill that I use with a lot of my kids. Can you just mention that to him whenever he starts to get triggered? Hey, maybe Miss O'Brien said, maybe you should try and use your safe space. And a lot of times that's just all they need is, oh yeah, I can't remember to do that on my own, but if somebody helps me remember, then I can start using it, and it makes it a little bit easier. We do that with parents too. So if as a counselor, we do that with the parents, we'll call and we'll kind of check in with the parent and say, hey, here's some of the things we're working on. Can you help work on that at home? But being a school-based therapist, I get to do that with the teachers too. So the student is getting that support in all areas. My very first year here, and she was in fifth grade my first year. So she's in seventh grade now. So I don't see her anymore. But she was very difficult to build that rapport with in the beginning. She was not trusting of anything or anyone. She didn't really want to put anything out there. So even if we were doing some of that play therapy techniques and things like that, she just would not do anything. So I think she made the biggest impact because she was a challenge. She was a big challenge, and she kind of helped me to step outside of my box and find new ways and new things that kind of related to her a little bit better and helped her to see that, I can tailor this to you and we can do what you're comfortable with. And by the end, she was very open, and she kind of worked really hard, harder than a lot of my other kids, I think. So she knew what she was getting into and was just able to kind of do it on her terms. I feel like my biggest success, there was a kindergartner when I was here, my very first year, that the school had basically given up on when I got here. He was very difficult. He had lots and lots of trauma in his background. He would not stay in class. He tried to leave the school building itself several times. He was very destructive within the classroom. And they were basically just at a loss. I don't know what to do with him. So I feel like he's my biggest success in the sense that I fought really hard for him within the school. With the administrators, with the teachers, with the social emotional learning team that we have here. And he's doing well. I still see him, actually. So he is a great kid and does not run anymore. He still has his moments. We all do, right? of outbursts and things that are triggering to you, but he has safer and healthier coping skills when he has to deal with those now. The biggest thing is just kind of sharing those resources, finding those resources that are important, like us, like LFCS. We've got so many different resources, and just kind of sharing those resources with the community and with your friends and neighbors just helps everybody to find what they're needing and to see that it's okay. Destigmatizing mental health issues is very important and something that we can all do. And just kind of, especially in certain populations, getting mental health counseling and things like that is a difficult thing to do. We're here to help. We're not here to change you. We're not here to make your community different. We're here to support you and to get you in a more healthy position.